Hello, I'm Becky Dowd, and this is The Journey to Salvation. Join me as we walk alongside real people and hear the unique journeys that led them to faith in Jesus. My guest today is Kirk Owens. Hello, Kirk.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Way better than I deserve.
Thank you for walking over from the rec space.
You're welcome. I try to do what I can.
Yeah. So, Kirk, you and I have known each other. Let me tell you when the first time I met you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I didn't really, you're a little bit younger than me. So growing up, I really didn't know you. Like I knew your Uncle Buck. Mm-hmm. Because Buck's just a little bit older than me. But I didn't know you. But the first time I really, I think, met you was we were at the same church. And it was right after you got saved, I think. And you ran up to me because you knew who I was because you were friends with my youngest brother. And
Jonathan.
Yes. And so you ran up to me and you were just like, hey, I got saved and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. Not that I wasn't excited, but I didn't really know who you were. But
well, I knew who you were because when I even lived at Jonathan's house for a short stint, he took me in during a tough time of my life. But you and David and Hillary and AC were the Christians down the hill who we needed to hide from or we thought we did. But you and David, I would see you guys walking up and down the road, and I would maybe say hi, but
I didn't realize you lived with him for a little while.
Just for a short stint, and he actually lived with us in Jonesboro for a short stint. Oh. Both of them were not pretty stints.
Did you live in that house there close to my mom and dad's with you?
Yes.
Well, I've got a story about that.
I bet.
But anyway.
Lots of stories there.
Yeah.
Some forgettable and some unforgettable.
Yeah. I just remember I could see that house from my house. Mm-hmm. And I knew if the lights were on, then Jonathan was home safe. And because I was really burdened for him at that point in my life because of, how he's living his life. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize you were up there too, probably some of that time.
Yeah, living my life.
Yeah, living your life. Well, hey, let's back up a little bit and tell me how it was growing up for you.
Well, so I'm a Wynn boy, born and raised here. We did move to Batesville for second and third grade. Mm-hmm. My dad was building that power plant, helping build that power plant that's in Newark. And so I remember moving, and then things got really rocky with my parents, so we moved back home. They got a divorce. I have two siblings, one an older sister, Kristen, and a younger brother named Bert. Mm-hmm. And so not long after moving back to Wynn, I started fourth grade. My grandpa, my mom's dad, Joseph Garr, and my mom and them grew up. A lot of my story is straight down Wilson Street at the corner of Wilson, and I'm pretty sure Langill, the corner of Wilson and Langill by that Federal Compress. But I remember growing up there. I remember Christmases there. I remember being the little boy who just loved family life. I've always loved older people. And looking back, I loved hanging out with an old lady across the street over there. Her name was Claire Rutherford. She was a believer in the Lord Jesus, and I knew she prayed for me. She was a very interesting person. She always took care of me, always fed me. And, of course, that's the way to my heart. It's good food. But I would say growing up, I loved life. I loved deer hunting. I loved being outdoors. I loved farming. Farming was, once I was introduced to driving a case tractor, a 1570 case tractor with an offset disc out on Owens Brothers Farms, I fell in love with it. I remember I couldn't sleep at night, just laying. I'd put my rubber boots, my lacrosse rubber boots on, and my Cross County Farmers Co-op hat on. I would put a white T-shirt on. I would tuck my T-shirt in and put my jeans on and get in the mirror and just practice looking at my farmer self. I thought I was, and I couldn't sleep at night thinking about getting on a tractor that next day. And it was I fell in love with it. Mm-hmm. I loved it so much. And growing up, looking back, I remember I didn't like the wind blowing. If the wind was blowing, I went in the house. I had a fear of the wind. When the wind would be, not even a storm, it could be a sunny day. I just didn't like the wind. And then I remember growing up, I was a deep thinker. You mentioned Buck earlier, and of course my dad. I would be staring off into space, and they'd be like, "What are you thinking?" I was like, "Well, you don't really want to know." And I was a worrier. I worried about things that I didn't have any business worrying about. I worried about adult things. When I knew things weren't right at home with my parents and just with grandparents and just people in my life. And one of the worries that I remember having growing up was I was consumed with the end of the world and end times things, nuclear wars, and just had an overwhelming sense of fear. The wind kind of led to one thing to another. And I lived a happy life. I remember being happy as a kid.
Now, did y'all go to church when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah. We grew up in St. Peter's, and then things something happened there, so we transferred down to Forest City to St. Francis of Assisi church. So that's pretty much where we went to church all of my growing up years.
So how were things for you in high school?
In high school, that's a really good question. I continued to love farming. I wanted to work. I wanted my own truck. I got it and was paying for it as a little Chevy S10. I still dream about that truck at times, but I still have it.
Did they make those anymore?
Not quite like that, but we went to Bell Chevrolet, and I'll never forget it, in Little Rock, and I got a brand new one. My cousin Jason ended up getting a black one just like it. But growing up, I went to parties, Becky. I enjoyed life, but really it was hunting and farming. And I remember my parents used to encourage me to get out and not be up under their feet on Friday nights or Saturday nights. But I was a homeboy. To answer your question, growing up, I just wanted to be home. I wanted to be where there was a stable place of quiet and just let's go hunting the next day, or let's go get on a tractor the next day. So
you thought you'd probably be farming your whole life?
That or something agriculture related, something associated to farming, such as a chemical rep or a field consultant. And I did pursue all that.
So what did you do after you graduated?
Graduated high school. I went to Monticello, my first little stint. Monticello is what I call it. They were the boll weevils.
That's where my dad grew up, Monticello. Really?
Yeah. And so I went out for the baseball team, and really it wasn't anything to make it. Coach Lee Moore had gone there, and he was a huge influence in my high school baseball career, and he always was encouraging me you can do it. You can do anything. And he was a great, great coach. Him and Coach Stepp both were huge influences in my life. I still remember the things they said and the things, the way they said it. But he encouraged me to go there. He had a relationship with the coach there, Coach Preston, and he put in a word for me. And so I found myself down there freshman year of college playing baseball. And I should have stayed there, Becky. I had everything I needed right there. It was small town. It was a good school. It wasn't a big to-do. But I was discontented. I felt like I had to be in Fayetteville. That's where I always had dreamed to go, Razorbacks. And I didn't really give it a fair shot. And then at that point when I began to, whereas I was encouraged in high school to get out and go, do something sociable, be at a party with friends. Mm-hmm. I could go to those parties, Becky, but I still had a good time not partaking in some of the things that were going on there with some of my friends. But after I went to college, I began to dabble into things that just took me down the beginning of a downward spiral of really just self-inflicted, living without purpose, living reckless to the point of should have been dead many times over.
Mm-hmm. So you did you finish school then? Did you graduate college?
I did not at that point. After Monticello, after Fayetteville, withdrew from there, came back home. A lot of my I did a little short stint at EACC. A lot of my buddies were in Jonesboro at that time, and we decided to get a house together. Mm-hmm. Half the house was in school, the other half was just at that point we had no business being in college. We couldn't make grades. We'd just be wasting more money. Mm-hmm. So we went to work to support our habits and support our lust and desires to live in the ways of the world. Mm-hmm. And we did it. And we did it to the max. Mm-hmm. After that, which would be jumping ahead in this story later, and we can wait till we get to that in the chronological order. The Lord had a way of redeeming it all. Mm-hmm. So at that point, no, I get out of school and didn't have any business being in school.
So you stayed in Jonesboro for a little while, but then
probably 7-8 years.
Okay. At some point you made it back to farming in Cross County.
Yeah, so went to first. My brother, we'd lived in separate households growing up. After the divorce, he went to live with my mom. I went and ended up living with my dad. Mm-hmm. Loved my brother. Didn't see him but about 3 or 4 times a year, maybe, if that much. But I noticed every time I'd get around him, he was living even more reckless. I would say not as involved in some things, but I got real concerned about his well-being, so I begged him to come live with me in Jonesboro. So I moved out of my house with my friends, and my brother and I start a life together that we kind of didn't have, and we actually lived on Owens Street.
Oh, really?
Jonesboro, yeah, off of Southwest Drive, and worked at J.T. White Lumber Company. Still talk to guys that work there, but a good bit of us guys from Wynn that was running in our circle was we were employed at J.T. White Lumber Company. We had some amazing times and rough times, but during those deliveries to all those new construction sites and working with those construction work, we met a man named Galen Pierce, salt of the earth kind of guy. He was a godly man. And I would go to deliver materials to his house, and he was a builder and a cabinet maker, and his brother was as well. And I begged him to let us move into a house down in Valley View. It was kind of country, even more so than it is now. And it was in his front yard, and he had an old rent house that he had purchased and fixed it up a little bit. And it took months of begging, but the Lord moved me and my brother out there into that house on Mount Carmel Road. And I knew of spiritual things at that time. I thought it was cool. It was Mount Carmel Road, and the Lord was really working and drawing at that point. And so at that time, I remember going to one of my cousin's football games was at Nettleton, and went to Nettleton that night. Wynn was in town, And Matt was, he was all over the field. I mean, he was like punt returner, running back, D-back.
Oh, wow.
I sat with his dad, Tommy, who I'd worked for on the farm, who had hooked me up with consulting work with Archie a few years prior. As I told you when we were talking beforehand, Archie was the first man that I had seen that was on fire for Jesus. And the Lord called him out of consulting into a pastoral there. I think he began his first pastor job was there at Wynn Baptist. And it was good to be with Tommy and George Owens that night because they were watching Matt. And I remember that night George asked me, he said, well, how are you doing? And I remember telling him, well, I'm doing good, George. And I was not doing good. He said, well, how do you know you're doing good? And I said, my conscience. And he laughed, that old George Owens laugh. And I remember he said, well, I guess that's a pretty good gauge or a pretty good indicator. But I was convicted because I knew my conscience. I knew I was wicked and that my conscience would lead me astray. And then behind him was his brother Tommy. And he said, well, look here, I don't know what you're doing, but if you ever need to come back home, I got a spot on the farm and I won't let you starve to death. If you ever get to where you need, and really what he was saying, if you ever hit rock bottom, I got a spot for you. And God had done a work in his life. He had worked for, like I said, years before, 7, 8 years before. He was a different Tommy at that time. And he was more intentional. He had been making disciples and being discipled by a group of good men. And the Lord had just done a work. And I never forgot what both of those questions were that night. What are you doing? And how do you know you're doing? And those conversations just stuck with me. And it was it'd be that next fall. I contacted Tommy. It was fall harvest, which is my favorite time, hands down. Fall harvest is that's my lane. I love farming's one thing. Some people like the spring planting. Well, the wind blows all spring. But fall harvest was just what God always brought me back to.
Yeah.
And I always thought there was something wrong with the wind. Like I had a chip on my shoulder. I had, it was the enemy. It was my flesh. It was people that loved me and cared about me. They just didn't know how to. Some of them didn't know how to articulate that in a way without, I felt, being judgmental or being nosy. But the problem was not wind. It was me. And, God won. He brought me back, at least for the season. I was still living with my brother in Jonesboro, but that was the beginning of going back to my roots, working on the farm. And through that's when I started getting questions from Tommy and even Joey and Matt. And I remember Richard Sisk was there. They would ask me questions, and they were biblical questions. And the only thing I had was my religious background answers that didn't line up with the Bible. And I used to get frustrated that they knew what I didn't know, and they had what I didn't have, and that being a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And so the Lord was doing a work at that time, and finished the year, the harvest, and did a few things for them. They had some rent houses in Jonesboro. Did a few odds and ends jobs, built a fence. I bet it wasn't good at one of their rent houses. And then birthday rolls around that next February. We're talking 2003. It was the year 2003. And ended up wrecking my truck. That was another thing the Lord used. My pride and joy was wrecked. I was really close to being home that night. I usually didn't hang out and do the club scene, but that night I did. And the Lord kept me out of trouble, but I still wrecked my truck. And faced a decision, am I going to come back to win, like win? And didn't have a means of transportation. I knew Tommy did, but looking back, it was totally the Lord getting me away from some of my traps and some of my toxicity and bringing me to Him. Are you tracking with me?
I am. So did you move back to Wynn at that point then and started working on the Owens farm?
I did. I went to Tommy and told him I'd messed up. I remember Joey being there and they could tell that I was at a point of I was at a crossroad. What was I going to do? And I remember one thing Joey kept telling me was, you're going to have to change your friends. And he wasn't even walking with the Lord then. And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my friends. Well, first I had to be changed before I could change anyone, before Jesus could change. I can't change anyone anyway. I couldn't do anything for myself. And so that is, I ended up, and it was a slow transition, but the Lord brought me back here. Now, it was ugly. I would do one leg in the world, one leg in following Jesus, one leg in the church. And it was a time where I made terrible decisions and continued to, but I was tasting and seeing that the Lord was good. I knew He was drawing me. I started listening to some of the things that they were listening to on the radio, biblical sermons, Bible-based sermons and preachers on my tractor radio, listening to Christ-centered music, Jesus-exalting music. And I was tasting and seeing the goodness of the Lord. I just had to surrender. I knew I was a sinner. I knew I'd made a mess of my life. And God was working. Jesus was working. He's still working.
So at what point did you surrender it all?
Okay, so for me, I know dates. I know a lot of people, some people listening may not, and I don't want them to get caught up in the dates because today just happens to be December the 8th of 2025. And what are we doing with Jesus today is what matters. It's never a prayer. It's never an experience. Those things can happen and be a part of our testimony. But who are we trusting today and who are we following today? So I'll just put that in there. But for me, the first time that I had an encounter and an experience with Jesus was March 12th, 2003. That was after I'd come home from wrecking my truck. There was an evangelist that had come to Wynn Baptist, which was the last place I would ever go to church because that was those people that shared Jesus with people. They were evangelistic. I went to school with those people and they were holy. I was not.
Who was the evangelist?
Thomas Young, a man from Oklahoma, who has since committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but the Lord used him. How they got me there was my belly. Remember I told you back I was always in good with the cafeteria workers, always in good with that old lady named Claire because she fed me. Well, Tommy hit me up one morning at the shop. Hey, you want to go eat lunch with us today? Well, I thought we was going up to Jean's house. And I said, hey, what are we having? I said, is Jean cooking? He said, yeah. He said, let me find out. Well, she was always in the kitchen. And he called her. And he came back. He said, beans and cornbread. And I said, I'm there. Well, lunchtime rolled around and we jumped in the truck and we went to a men's luncheon at Wynn Baptist. It was the first night of the evangelist. Or I guess it'd probably be the second night. He's probably there on a Sunday. That's usually how it rolls. And so the Lord used that man to effectively show me and probably everyone in the room by just going through the 10 Commandments that we are guilty and sinful, and break every single one of them. And I knew it was me, and I checked a couple boxes on a piece of paper that day. I want to know more about what it means to follow Jesus, and I'm interested, and somebody can contact me. Butch Bachman was sitting at the table with us that day. There was a lot of farmers in there. And so that night, I was invited to church. I went across the street. Ken and Debbie Thomas's son, Ross, and Jason Garr, and all Barry Epps, people I used to run with, Mac Knight boys. We were cooking across the street, and I remember watching all the cars come that night to see the evangelist on that Monday night. And I told the guys we were doing our thing, grilling, partying, drinking. I remember telling the guys I'm supposed to be over there tonight, and they said, "Oh, shut up. Don't start talking that stuff again," because the Lord had been working on me. And I went the next night. And I remember walking. I was on the back row. I remember the people sitting around me. And I ran down the aisle, and they put me with Kevin Bolin. Remember him? And he took me in the gymnasium, and he prayed for me. And I remember going home that night. I felt a huge burden. I felt some weight lift on. I felt like I prayed and my prayers got past the ceiling that night. The Lord was really working on me. But man, over the next year or so, I continued to give in to the flesh and selfish ambition, selfish desires. I'd give in to pressure, my own pressure, some of it peer pressure, some of it just my own. I wasn't putting myself in position to win. I wasn't doing what I was already learning to do as far as living a sanctified, holy, set apart life. And this, looking back, one of the biggest lessons that I need to keep remembering is it was a long-term investment for those men that said, we're going to give Kirk a shot. The Lord had called them to minister to me and get me to Jesus and to disciple me to Jesus and invest. They made a commitment and an investment, and it took, and I'd done some of the craziest, stupidest things during that time, and the Lord asked, somebody would ask Tommy, what keeps you invested in this young man? He said, the Lord won't let me let him go. And it was that next fall, September the 11th, I went to, Tommy don't like the Razorbacks.
No, he doesn't?
No. And I loved them to the point they were an idol. And I still wish I didn't care because it's hard being a Razorback. But I remember I had a friend back from J.T. White named Danny. There was actually two Dannys up there. I've been in touch with both of them somewhat recently, but one was my boss, Danny Mounts, and I try to connect with him because I put him through so much. And I just let him know that I'm always here. And so if you're listening, pray for Danny Mounts. He's a good man. I just don't know where he's at. And I love him. And I was so wrong with him. And then there's another guy, Danny Hinkle. He had tickets to the Texas game, the Razorbacks in Texas. And we're talking September 11th. We're talking right in the middle of rice harvest. And I wanted to go so bad, and I didn't care about my job. I was still selfish, still am today. And Tommy was like, we're doing rice harvest. So I went through Jean, which was wrong. I was like, but I was begging.
Jean is Tommy's wife.
Exactly. Yeah. And I begged her, and she's like, now that's during rice harvest. You're putting Tommy in a really hard spot by even asking, and it's the Razorbacks. And but anyway, I went, and we stayed. I had a pop-up camper I shared with Jay Bachman, and we bought a pop-up camper, and we pulled that thing to Devil's Den Park. Tommy let me go, by the way.
Was it in Fayetteville?
Right outside of Fayetteville, Devil's Den State Park. And we put that tent up, and we went to that Razorback game. And all night that night, we barely got beat at the end. Matt Jones fumbled, I think it was. We were driving to beat them 2 straight years. We'd beat them that year in Austin. But anyway, that night, I argued with this fella about who God was. Lord had already shown me himself, and I just had never surrendered. So on that way home, after that ugly night of arguing and partaking in some of the same old that was crippling me, I remember coming home, and I was going to go to the country club and play golf, but the Lord kept saying, why don't you try to go to church? You missed church this morning. Why don't you go to Sunday night? I was in the balcony. So September the 12th, 2004, I surrendered that night to Jesus. It was the Lord's Supper night. Archie had all the deacons lined in the side, and it was really cool, Becky, because Tommy had he's about at his wit's end. I don't blame him. He had told David Hill, who grew up in the same background I did at St. Peter's, he told him, he said, would you pray about what you might say to Kirk to try to let him know it's about a relationship with Jesus, and it's not about religion and about what we do. So when the Lord took me out on the balcony, he's just like, if you get up, I'll walk you down the stairs. And he did. And I went around the side, and I went straight to David Hill. Unbeknownst, I didn't know any of that conversation had happened, but that was just the Lord. And he had his head down, and I tapped him on the shoulder, and he looked up, and I could see it on his face, and he said, Kirk. And that night, I'll never forget it. I went back home that night. I checked all the boxes that night. I want to follow Jesus. I want to follow that up with believer's baptism. I want to know how to be involved in men's groups. I knew the Lord had been leading me to go on a mission trip. I'd already went to the first meeting. It was to Uzbekistan with a bunch of farmers. All that was already happening. But I went home that night to the corner of Wilson and Langell. I'm talking years later, 20 plus 30 years later. My grandma had a rent house built on the same property that Clara, the old lady who used to pray for me, she was a lady that dipped snuff. She had her Bible out. She sat on the porch, and it seemed like she was waiting on me as a little boy to come across to her house. That house had to be tore down because it was just dilapidated. But there was an apartment built there, and I begged my grandma to let me live in that house. And that's where it happened for me. That night when I went home from church, in that bedroom, there was a war that I could see going on, a spiritual battle, like a tug of war. And the Lord was telling me, you're going to tell them about me. You're going to witness for me. You're going to the ends of the earth for me. I didn't know what any of that was, but I knew what he was saying. He was saying, I'm going to use you. And then the enemy would flood in and say, yeah, what about this? What about that? What about these people you've hurt? What about these terrible sins you've committed? And the Lord said, he closed his mouth, and he won the battle for my soul in that bedroom that night at the corner of Wilson and Langell. How incredible.
Wow.
And I know everyone and somebody listening that you may not have those details. You may not have those dates, but you asked to share my testimony, which is, and just like you prayed, Becky, it's his story. That's what he did for this boy. And everything changed for me that night. I could see, I could hear, and he started a work. He had already started a work in me, but he sealed me, and he gave me the Holy Spirit that night. I knew it happened. And it has never been anything but him. And his goodness and his kindness. And yeah, I hadn't been perfect since then. I hadn't been perfect today. Mm-mm. But my hope is in Jesus, and he is the perfect one.
So how was it with the people that knew the old Kirk, and then all of a sudden you are this new creation in Christ?
Well, they came around and they would knock on my door because my place went from being a hangout to holy grounds because of Jesus, not because of me. Mm-hmm. And they had heard that something had happened, and for a minute I didn't answer the door. We were going through purpose-driven life at the church at that time. Archie, by the way, was the pastor. You know, I'd worked for him 8-9 years previous, and he was the pastor. I'd see him at the back door. Hey, what are you doing here, man? I'm glad you're here. We got a spot for you. And now that's what I tell people. Hey, we got a spot for you.
Yeah.
Right here. And I went from not answering the door to answering the door. And I'd tell them about Jesus. I'd talk to them about Jesus. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some wanted to hear and some didn't. And I've seen some of the very people that came, I've seen them come to Jesus. I've seen some of them die. Mm-hmm. And some with Christ and some without. But that's what happened. And of course, family members were supportive of my decision, and they supported me. They even supported me before I, had a relationship with Jesus. I was just religious. But it was hard too, though. Family can support you, and then it's still hard if they don't have that relationship with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so it's taken years, but I'm seeing some of that happen. I'm seeing some of that fruit happening because it just takes time. It's not on our time, it's on his time. So good question.
So we're going to do a little parentheses here and just kind of explain what the difference is between religion and actually having a relationship with the Lord. Because I know, sometimes we think it's all about, I've got to, do these things. I've got to go to church. I've got to, do these things so that Christ will accept me or so that I will be religious. But that's really not what it's about.
Right. And you nailed it. Religion is about us and what we do, the good things we do or the bad things we don't do. Whereas a relationship is about putting your hope in a person, Jesus Christ, who lived the perfect life we could never live, who died in our place and paid for our sins. The fact that the one that made us, created us, knows us, loves us, Christ demonstrated his love for us in this, that while we were still yet sinners, he died for us. Yeah. That we can put our hope in the living, true God. We can know the one who, I love Colossians, by him all things were created, things were created for him, by him, and to him and through him all things exist. Mm-hmm. And by him all things hold together. And the fact that we can know him, follow him, worship him, talk to him, communicate with him. He tore the curtain in two, and we have direct access with the Father through his son, Jesus. We have a relationship, a personal, living relationship. That's why it's important to have a living, personal testimony, is because it's ongoing. We're living it out on the daily. We're speaking to him.
And it's what he's done.
And not what we've
done.
Exactly.
He initiates all of that with us.
And then that way, Becky, he gets all the credit. Mm-hmm. If we could do it, we would boast and we'd take credit for it. For it is by grace you are saved.
Through faith.
Through faith. It's not of yourself.
It's a gift of God.
It's a gift of God so that no one can boast.
Ephesians 2, 8, and 9.
Yeah. And then 10, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance so that we might walk in them. So he does it all. He gets all the credit. He's worthy. He's the only one worthy of all the credit. Paul said it well, my only boast is in Jesus, knowing him. There's nothing good in Kirk apart from Jesus. Right. I've shown when and wherever I've been what Kirk's capable of. Jesus is showing what he can do in a broke down vessel who's surrendered and humbled.
Right.
And that's a daily thing. It still has to happen today. We have to crucify the flesh daily. We have to walk with him daily.
Yeah. And I think that, and I wanted you to clarify that because I think a lot of people, and maybe me even at some point, just doing those rituals and going to church and doing certain things, those are things we're doing, but what we need is what God is doing in us.
And especially hard if somebody's listening that might be in the ministry is I have to crucify on a Sunday morning when the alarm goes off early and it's been a long weekend, I have to be careful that it's not just a job. I mean, of course I'm here. I'm on staff, but boy, I miss it if I miss Jesus, if I'm not watering my soul. And so it's important for those in the ministry to be looking for many ways to water. You have to, it's not work. It's serving the only one who's worthy to serve.
And it's why we are created. And if we can just kind of focus on that, God created us for this purpose of reaching others for him. Every day we get up, we need to know that's our job.
Yeah, Colossians. Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work heartily as unto the Lord, not unto man, knowing it is from the Lord you will receive your inheritance. You are serving the Lord Jesus Christ. Are we perfect at that? Heck no.
Yeah.
But Jesus is, and so that goes back to abiding in him and letting him do it through us. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness and all these things he adds. To answer your question about the degree, after I surrendered to Jesus and he began to grow me, my very first 2 discipleship groups was, of course, with Tommy's at Farm Bureau, which later moved to Tommy and Matt's shop, Joey's shop, George. All of them impacted me in crazy ways. I mean, I used to argue with them, with Joey about the Bible, and then when we talk about, and he talks about where he was wrong, and I talk about where I'm wrong, and me and George ended up having this crazy good relationship. I got to speak at his funeral and tell of the mighty things he done, but all of them were so kind and good to me, and there was a time where I needed to move on, but I remember this, Becky, you asked about the college degree. After saved and surrendered, and he knew it, everyone knew that Jesus had started to work in me and was working. I was being discipled, and the Lord was using me and doing what he does. He'll do it in anyone. He asked me, what can I help you do? What do you want to do beyond here? And I knew the Lord. I'd been to Uzbekistan. I'd been to Bolivia. I knew the Lord had called me to overseas missions. I knew it beyond a shadow of a doubt. I knew. My very first time when I was in Uzbekistan, I was like, Lord, no. And you don't say, Lord, no. Usually if it's Lord, no, it's the Lord's fixing win. You're fixing to be taken to the woodshed, and it'll be, yes, Lord. And I said, okay, Lord, I could serve you in a place like this. I could live and move and breathe right here. I was like, but not here, Lord. He's like, just commit to wherever. And I would park my tractor, and I loved, even when I was lost and doing things and partaking in things I shouldn't have been, I loved working at night. Driving a tractor at night was even more so my lane. And those times of the Lord on the tractor were great during the day. I remember I used to call Dustin after a sermon, or call, just get on the phone. It even drove Tommy crazy. I'd listen to a sermon, I'd call, and I'd have church with whoever I was on the other end of the phone with, just calling and talking about the things of the Lord. He grew us together. And, you know, Dustin's working on the farm, not in the ministry yet, me either. And he was just looking back. I see all that, but I'd get off the tractor at night, and I'd intentionally park it away from my truck, and it'd just be me and the Lord, and the stars would be falling down, and it was almost like I'd reach out and grasp on. I said, okay, Lord, where do you want me to serve you at? I was gung ho. Where do you want me to go, Lord? And I could feel his presence, Becky, so thick. It was scary. And then the fear would quench the spirit. I remember that. And it'd be like gone. And I was in a place where I couldn't hear him. But one morning he told me clearly, I was reading Psalm 96, declare my glory among the nations, make me known among all peoples. And he told me, I heard a voice, not the audible voice that we're hearing right here, but a voice of the Lord told me, son, I want you to go to China. I knew it. I told two people. I told Matt Argo and James Langston. Mm-hmm. I told them, and I journaled it. And Tommy had asked me, what can I do to help you? And I said, I've got to have a college degree to go to work for the International Mission Board. You got to have a college degree. So he said, all right, get some classes. I'll work you through school. So I started back at EACC where it kind of had started. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's such a good option for anyone listening. EACC, get all you can get right here at home. I had some of the best professors. I learned so much. I was ready this time. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a waste of time. And
how old were you at this point?
At this point, I'm 28, 29 years old. And then the Lord in his sovereignty, he hooked me up with someone named Matt Argo, his dad, Mike, right? Mm-hmm. Had gone to not EACC, but John Brown University. And so did Russ Davis, Jennifer's husband. Russ, by the way, a little side note, he's the one that God used to make me fall in love with coffee. He used to go to airports all over traveling with his job, and he'd bring coffee beans from different regions of the world.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I ended up being that. By the way, coffee is the evangelical drug of choice, right? It's one you can get away with.
Yeah.
So, me and Matt Argo enrolled at John Brown University, and I had some of the most incredible professors. A lot of the professors were coming out of Searcy from Harding to Little Rock, to the North Little Rock campus where we were doing our degree.
So is a lot of that online, and then you meet?
None of it was online. It was all in person, but it was intensive. It was like 4 to 5 hours on a Tuesday night. And so working full-time job, going to class.
Right.
And then you end up going to the campus in Siloam Springs and graduating.
That's right.
And the Lord did it, Becky. I was able, through Tommy and those patients, and through just the Lord's side. We'd do these CLEP tests where they were called Dantes. They were military tests that you could do. And if you passed one, you could get 3 hours of credit. I remember calling Gina Clegg and just asking her, would you please beg? So we've always called Gina and begged her to pray when we needed something, me and Carly. And please pray. This was before Carly, but I thought she had a direct line, so I'd say, there's no way I can pass these, but I believe you can ask God, and God can make it happen. Yeah. And I passed like 6 of them, and I got college credit through that, so I was able to accelerate and get done. And then next thing I know, I'm training to go overseas. I tried to go to Indonesia. I tried to go to Zambia. I tried to go to India. I was trying to do everything except what the Lord had told me, and that was to go to China. He confirmed it while I was in Virginia. We got delayed. Our flights were delayed in Atlanta. It started snowing, and I could not wait to get back home and get in my journal to see where he had told me to go, where to go, and through my hard-headedness. But it was 1 year to the day that he had told me those things. Oh, wow. And next thing I know, I'm headed there. It was incredible. My time in East Asia was unbelievable.
Was it 2 years that you were there?
Right at 2 years. It's a 2-year term.
And you had several teams from Wynn Baptist that went.
Yes.
And worked alongside you. And I've heard from some of those people, and that sounds scary. Like buses going up the sides of a mountain, and there's no rail or anything. Anyway. I guess that's a nightmare of mine, so that stuck out to me.
You would flip, and some of them did too. I learned, I was stretched so much there. My faith grew so much there. I definitely didn't always believe and trust like I should have, but it was amazing. I didn't ever have a time where I wondered if I was where I was supposed to be. I knew I was, and I could have actually stayed another year, and then went right back. But I knew the Lord was bringing me home. What happened is while I was there, my roommate from South Carolina, his name's Casey. Many people in this area have known and connected with him. He's actually been here, and we went to this big conference in Thailand, and he kept introducing me all these Southern belles that love Jesus with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. And there was this one in particular, one from Norman, Oklahoma. Carly Norman from Norman, Oklahoma. If I could just have her, Lord, I would own the town. And but anyway, I saw her, and she had this beautiful brunette hair, just flowing, beautiful smiles, loved Jesus with everything she had. I was drawn to her instantly. And at that point, I was singing. I remember Kim Dillard was just wrecking her brain, crying, how can you go overseas single like this? I was like, just pray for me. I was content as I could be. At that point, I had been in some relationships, and they were amazing. I mean, but the Lord just won. He told me to go as you are, go. And I did, and I met her, and the Lord just done an incredible work. And I knew even before I came home that he was going to put us together. I believed him for her. And we had talked just a little bit. You know, we'd only spent 1 week together. She came home about 6 months before I did. And when I came home, I tried to get some sleep. It wasn't happening. I went turkey hunting, and I got home, and I remember Tommy asked me, he said, is there this godly lady that I'm hearing about? And it was raining outside, and we weren't working. And he said, you better go see her. And I did. And I remember being in her living room back in, the Lord said, yep. I heard him speak again loud and clear.
Yeah.
You'll be a fool if you let this one go. I could see how she was conducting herself. And her family. She had a little sister that had been adopted, Cammie, who we love so much, and she was just a mother. She was a warrior. She was everything that this boy dreamed of before I made a complete, absolute disaster in my life. Everything to the T. She loved Jesus with all her heart, soul, mind, and strength. She was a virgin. Her hair color. Everything I'd hoped for as a young boy before I made a mess of my life, she was that. And only God could ever do anything like that. And he did it. Came home, we got married. We thought we'd go right back overseas after starting a family. I never cried until July the 17th when Annabelle hit the ground. I still haven't quit crying.
Annabelle is your daughter.
She is. Already had Jaken's name picked out. I found it in, Chronicles. I seen it one morning, and I said, babe, I really like this name. She said, oh, I do too. So we had Jacob's name before Annabelle even came. And then a couple years later, Jesus gave us Jacob, which means the Lord Yahweh will establish. And I love them both so much, the same. And I remember Jean, back to Jean Owens, she used to say, when Carly was pregnant, she said, I bet you're wondering how you could love one as much as you love it. Annabelle. And I said, you're right. I have been thinking that. She said, don't worry. You will love him just the same. She was right. And I'm just a blessed man. We both, the Lord was already telling both of us separately before he ever really officially put us together that we're going to adopt someday. And so we're believing the Lord for that. Her name is Ame. We already have her Ame Lucille Owens. And that's Carly's middle name. And that was my great-grandmother's middle name.
I like what you call Carly.
Miss Oklahoma.
Miss Oklahoma. I just think that's just so sweet.
That's her.
Yeah. She's a wonderful woman.
She is. And back to that Wilson Street thing, after we were married and started raising a family, and Jesus, we worked, after working with Tommy, and then we worked 7 years at Hobbs Equipment with Larry. Me and him became good friends. I love the man. I owe him so much. He taught me so much. Dwayne, Shannon, Randall, all of them taught me so much. God taught me so much. Our first 7 years of marriage and our first 7 years of Annabelle's life was at Hobbs Equipment, and they trusted me. They believed in me. They invested in us. They done a lot of things that I'm forever grateful for. But after that, Dustin and I's relationship kept going. God had, in his sovereignty and wisdom, had moved Tony and Dustin out of farming and called Dustin to the ministry. Well, after that, Don Pusick in his wisdom thought that I needed to be ordained because I was taking a job as a chaplain for Kindred Hospice.
Yeah.
And so they were bought out, and my credentials didn't match up. To continue with their company, I needed 2 years as a pastor. And so that was funky times. I mean, there's so many times through there where I'm like, Lord, what is going on? And he would remind me, just like when me and Carly were married, we got to go to Israel for our honeymoon. It was incredible. But when we went to church in downtown Jerusalem on our honeymoon, the message that was for us was preparing us for some of the hard times that were coming. And the Lord would just, in his gentleness, remind, hey, remember when you asked me for something, even back there in Jerusalem? It's hard sometimes, but you just need to trust me. And it don't matter how it happens and how hurt you get and how bad your feelings are hurt. You just need to trust me. And so things happen like that at Tommy's. Things happen like that at Hobbs.
Yeah.
Things happen like that at Kindred. Things happen like that on the daily, here in ministry. You get your feelings hurt.
Well, and I think sometimes those doors are closed because God has another purpose for you.
Exactly.
And when the door closes, sometimes we take that personal. We say, why did this have to happen?
Right.
But we don't realize God had something else in store for us to do. Bingo.
And he taught me early on, don't look at the sheep. Don't look horizontally. Look vertically. Look to me, the good shepherd. Every one of us will let every one of us down if we're not, it will happen. I will let you down. You will let me down. Yeah. We all make mistakes in the journey. But if we look to Jesus, he's the one that never leaves us or forsakes us.
Right.
And so I say all that to say this, just seeing those things happen, and then Dustin calling and saying, hey, because when that happened with, as a chaplain for Kindred, I was like, well, I guess I need to call my pastor because we just planted the Bridge Church. And I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And I called and told him, and I remember him saying, you got to be kidding me.
Because you weren't on staff.
No.
We just had started out with 20 people, so.
We had a core group.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it happening, but he said, you're kidding me. I said, well, I just felt like I was supposed to call you because you're my pastor.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. You call your pastor when life, earth-shattering things happen. I said, oh, we're going to be all right, but just be praying for us. Mm-hmm. Well, he mulled it around and wasn't, but maybe 3 hours later he calls back. He said, hey, would you be on staff? Would you pray about being on? I'm not saying I can make it happen, but I'm going to talk to some people and see if we can make it happen.
Yeah.
And it wasn't no time. I'm standing up there in the top of the Merriman because that's the rented space. The Lord did it. He put us together. After we'd started, the first journey I ever had with him and Beth was I was a brand new believer, had just surrendered back in 2004. Mm-hmm. That New Year's, we went to a winter jam in Branson, Missouri. Mm-hmm. It was the year the tsunami happened in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. But New Song was there. Lincoln Brewster was there. It was my first ever Jesus movement concert type deal. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing Dustin and Beth, and they were super quiet people. They did, and I was super not quiet. And I just wanted to know them so bad. So fast forward all those years later in 2016, 17, 18 to 19, I'm all of a sudden not only doing ministry, but serving alongside Dustin. And I'm standing up in the top of the Merriman where our first
rented space
gathering,
the Bridge Church.
Yeah, happened. I'm looking out the window of the old shaver office, whatever that is. It don't even look like glass. It looks like melted glass. And guess what street I'm looking down? Wilson to the corner of Langille. I could see the old federal compress, the old red facade wall down there. And the Lord said, yep, I know what I'm doing. Wow. You just need to trust me. And it's just been like that. He's been blowing me away and blowing us away and doing such incredible things. Even this week, I mean, it's something all the time where he blows us away, and we just, to the praise and glory of his name. Yeah.
One thing that I remember Dustin sharing before was y'all were doing a visitation, like a door-to-door visitation or something at church. And I think you and he were a team, and he was very bashful back then.
Very.
Yeah. And
he's very bold today.
Yeah. And so y'all went to a door, and I think you knocked, and he was expecting you to speak to the person, but you just kind of threw him in there. And
dude didn't have no shirt on, and he had a nipple ring.
The guy at the door, not Dustin.
Right. Dustin has that now, but he answered the door, and he said, And I looked at Dustin, and Dustin was just white as a sheet. And I said, do you mind if my friend were to tell you about Jesus, or we were to talk to you about coming to church with us and tell you about Jesus? He said, would that be all right? And he said, I said, all right, Dustin, tell this man what we're out here doing. What are we out in his name? Why are we knocking on his door? And it was the whole way.
Oh, he probably deserved that, though.
It was getting him ready.
Yeah.
The Lord works all things together for the good of those who are called according to his purpose.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Kirk, do you have anything else you want to share with us?
I just praise God. Thank you for asking me. I don't want to tell this story, but it's not my story. It's his story. Mm-hmm. It's, what I'm saying is I love telling it. I just didn't want to do it with all this equipment and stuff. But I know it's a powerful tool, and I appreciate you being obedient to get these testimonies out there to some people that would not have a chance to hear about the most amazing gift, and it's right here at the most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah.
Christmas, the giver is the gift, and his name is Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and, one thing is when we share our story, sometimes we feel like we're being put in the spotlight, being self-centered or whatever, but really we're just sharing what Jesus did in our life. So the spotlight goes on him because it's not something we do. It's something that he's done.
Amen.
Continues to do in our life.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'll just say last week was one of the best. I mean, Carly and I are all the time talking about, with kids, we hear people say, you better enjoy it. It'll all go away. Mm-hmm. It just keeps getting better and better. Every season of life has just been incredible at our house with Annabelle and Jake. And just the stuff the Lord does makes no sense. Yeah. That we're getting these kind of blessings and getting to just see his work and to tell people about him and seeing people come to Jesus.
Yeah.
Just last week when you asked me if I could do it, I told you I could work you in that day, but that day at 6 a.m. Or 6:30, I'm leaving the house to be in Cherry Valley to share Jesus and to share another Bible passage. I shared about the lady that came to Jesus on behalf of her daughter, and he said, I came to the lost house of Israel and not you dogs, not you Gentiles. Mm-hmm. And she said, yes, I know that, but even the dogs under the table like to have the crumbs from the master. Mm-hmm. And I got to share that and tie that in and with the state championship that was going to be played the next day, and told them, mm-hmm. we got to be humble. We got to stay low under the table. We got to be humble. If you don't pray, you need to ask for this championship, mm-hmm. because he knows you want it. Mm-hmm. Why would you not ask the only one who can really give it?
Yeah.
And just point it all to Jesus. And then that afternoon to get to go in the Win Intermediate schools and tell these young boys that I love so much, these 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, mm-hmm. about Jesus, to give them a jar of honey, to share the gospel with them.
That verse you just quoted is what's on your label of your canned goods.
Yeah, I had to put that on there. I'm not saying that one will stay on there, but the honey that afternoon was his word, Psalm 19 and 119. His word is sweeter than honey, and even honey dripping from a honeycomb. And so I put on some honeycomb in there. I give all y'all one last night, mm-hmm. but put the honeycomb that he'd given us first year. That's another dream that I'd always had. I wondered about bees and just the neatness of actually having some bees. And a friend, Brad Avery, he hooked us up out there on the farm that the Lord blessed us with, and we've got bees, and we not supposed to have a harvest this year, but he blessed us with about 7 gallons of honey. Oh, and so why would I not share it? And so shared that with those little boys and told them mm-hmm. the gospel and just that we get to go in the schools where you can't do this. Well, who says you can't do it? Mm-hmm. Jesus makes a way.
Yeah.
And I just pinched myself that I get to keep, I'm still Kirk. I run my mouth and I'm passionate, but one of my favorite scriptures back in the day was zeal without knowledge is not good, mm-hmm. but zeal for the Lord. Mm-hmm. If he knows he knows how he made us. If we're going to run our mouths, let's run it about Jesus. Mm-hmm. If we're going to talk about something, let's talk about the truth that can set you free. Mm-hmm. And so I sometimes envy the quiet people in my life who just live it out. God uses them in incredible ways. They so beautifully shine Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I praise him that he made them that way. And they need to keep doing it and keep shining and keep doing whatever he tells them to do. Keep abiding in him. Mm-hmm. But for me, I'm a mouth runner. But I want to go down running my mouth for Jesus. Mm-hmm.
But I see you as being just bold and not being ashamed, because sometimes believers can be reluctant to share their faith because, for one thing, they don't want to be rejected. For another thing, they don't know if they're qualified. They might be asked something. But I like your boldness because you never know if that person, for one thing, if you're ever going to see them again, if anyone else has ever shared the gospel with them. You know, the Lord tells us that the harvest
is plentiful.
Yes, but the workers are few. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate that about you, because I think that sort of gives other people that same feeling that, oh, you know, Kirk can do this. He's not afraid to do this. These people aren't making fun of him or rejecting him. Mm-hmm. You know, but that's what the Lord wants us to do, is share our faith with others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we got to wrap up, but lastly, I would say that with that, the Lord's taught me so much. I mean, I thought it was my responsibility to get my whole family saved, and mm-hmm. I thought it was my responsibility to tell everybody they were lost and going to hell. 23 years later, I find myself just being still and knowing that He's God and He don't need me, mm-hmm. but He uses me. I find myself in that same battle that we all do as believers, knowing that it's not my righteousness, it's His righteousness. Mm-hmm. In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. Mm-hmm. This cornerstone, this solid ground, He's my only hope. There's nothing good in me but Jesus. And the one thing I would say to you, if you're following Jesus, is not to get caught up in the trap that Becky so beautifully said a while ago. It's not about what we do or don't do. It's about what Jesus has done. And the single most thing that I think makes our Father, Jesus, our friend, Jesus, our Redeemer, Jesus, jump up and down in heaven is when we trust Him. When it makes sense and when it don't make sense. For it is by grace alone, through faith alone. It is impossible to please God. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Mm-hmm. The righteous shall live by faith. Mm-hmm. And then He'll do it through us. Mm-hmm. As the verse continues to say that you quoted in Ephesians a while ago. Yeah. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, unto good works, which God prepared in advance. He does it through us. We have to be an open and empty vessel. And
we just have to abide in Him. You know, sometimes we look at, you know, getting to sharing our faith or doing this or doing that, but all He wants us to do is abiding Him, and He'll work all those things out and put those people in front of us.
Right.
And
yeah, and a lot of times He just wants us to pray and not say anything. Mm-hmm. He's able. He is able. Yeah. Just don't try to fix it. He's the only one that can fix it. Mm-hmm. We often try to do what only He can do. Yeah. And then we don't do what He allows us to do. We miss opportunities. And so we just have to walk that balance. Yeah. And I can just say and echo with the rest of my brothers and sisters, what an honor, what a privilege, what an absolute honor and privilege that He would use us. We was in small group the other day, and we got these Jesus shirts here mm-hmm. at the Bridge Church, and we've been walking through Hebrews, and Derek so beautifully pointed out in Hebrews chapter 2, it says Jesus is not ashamed to call us brothers and sisters. Well, when we first got those Jesus shirts, Becky, I remember having my own, and I'd go to Walmart, and I could feel different looks. I could feel different vibes. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, it's because I got my Jesus shirt on. Or I remember thinking, do I want to go in here? And as you said, He's made me bold. He's made me unashamed. Yeah. But when I first started wearing those, I got to thinking, yeah, am I ashamed of Jesus? That should never even be the question. Mm-hmm. Because why would we ever be ashamed of somebody like Jesus? There's no other name greater. There's no other name in which man can be saved. There's no one that's been perfect. He is the creator and sustainer of the universe. Mm-hmm. He is who He is. But the fact that he lets us put that shirt on, whether you wear that shirt or not, you wear the name Jesus if you follow him. Mm-hmm. That he's not ashamed of us. That's what ought to blow your socks off. That's what ought to crank your tractor up.
Yeah.
Or spin your pottery wheel.
Whatever the case may be.
Or burn your candle or melt your wax. It's Jesus is not ashamed of us, knowing that we blow it, knowing that we mess it up. But guess what? He finds us in our messes, and he makes it his message for all the world to see that, hey, I know he didn't do that. I know she didn't do that. Mm-hmm. Watch what I do through them. Mm-hmm. And that's what he's going to get the glory.
That's right.
So how could we ever not be ashamed? Or how could we ever be ashamed of the name Jesus when he's not ashamed of us?
Kirk, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us today. Check out our website at thejourneytosalvation.com. You will find additional information as well as a way to connect to us. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll be notified when new podcasts are available.